Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story TV and the Her Story podcast. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating and creative young woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, how old you are, and share your story with us today.
Thank you so much for having me on the show, Gertrude. I am seriously just so grateful to be here and share with the community that you've built. So my name is Kiana Jones. I am based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I am 29 years old, and I am the founder of Happening Hands, which is a membership community for makers. And it's where we teach them how to build thriving, profitable businesses. And my story starts when I was a kid. So I was always very, very creative as a child. Art was always something that I was interested in doing. My dad was very creative. He was a musician. And my mom is a massage therapist. So both of them had their own businesses. I think I kind of got some of their entrepreneurial spirit kind of handed down to me. And art came into my life at a very early age. I feel like I was probably between 9 and 10 when I started really getting interested in art. I remember, I think I was around 10 years old when I started drawing portraits of all of my favorite celebrities. And I mean, it's easy to find that sort of thing on the internet. So it was easy for me to just look up a reference photo and start drawing. Unfortunately, at home, things were not very good. So I had quite an abusive environment that I grew up in. And I also grew up being in a very low income household. So things were tough growing up. And I definitely used my art as an escape. I would just go in my room, shut the door, and paint or draw for hours. And that really followed me all through high school. I actually ended up going to boarding school because I wanted to be away from home. And they gave me like a stipend and some money to go. So my parents were able to afford it because the school was helping. And I had an amazing art teacher in high school who really was just an amazing mentor for me. And he taught oil painting. And it was so funny because I went to a school where music was a huge deal. And if you didn't do music, then you were thrown into the basement with the art kids, and you went to art class for a couple of hours every week. And I learned oil painting when I was between the ages of like 14 and 17. And I loved it. And I actually applied to art school, but I was getting all these messages from my dad saying, because he wasn't very successful with his creative business, saying you need to get a job with a salary, something where, the paycheck is going to be predictable. And, I don't want you to struggle like I do. That was the message. You're not going to make money with art. And that was very soul crushing because I did have all these mentors in my life who were very positive about my skills and my passion. And, they wanted me to see me succeed in what I loved. So I did apply to Savannah School of Art and Design, and I got in, and I didn't go because I just kept believing this message that I wasn't going to be able to make money with art. So I went to college and at University of Connecticut, and it was easy for me to go there because I lived 15 minutes away. And I had a mentor there who said, they saw my art and they were like, you should sell it, put it up on Etsy. And I had kind of had some experience with the creative community on Etsy already. I really loved shopping on their website, and I had started an art blog when I was 16, interviewing artists about their stories and putting it up on the blog. And so I listened, and I think I sold my first painting within 2 or 3 days or something, and I was hooked. And I became obsessed with Etsy and the creative community on there. And it wasn't until much later, when I had already gone through college. I went to college for art history. I did take some art classes for fun on the side. I love doing printmaking, that sort of thing. But I eventually became an art librarian at the University of Pittsburgh, did that for almost 5 years. And it was throughout those years that I really just kept on coming back to the creative community. Like at the end of my workday, I wanted to spend time on Etsy and in the Etsy community and interviewing artists and being a part of their stories. And I also started doing a lot of marketing for makers. So I started doing Pinterest marketing very early. I had done that in college even to pay for my books. And I loved doing that because I felt like I was lifting up them as well and helping see them succeed in their own businesses. And so I kept having this idea of maybe there's a job I can create for myself from this community that I love. Maybe it's marketing, maybe it's something else, maybe it's a community. I have no idea. So I kept on kind of thinking through those ideas over the years, and eventually it was about a couple of years before I quit my job. I was like, maybe it's a brick and mortar shop here in Pittsburgh where I feature makers' work. And then in the back, we have classrooms where we actually teach makers how to market their work. And so that was the initial idea. And I kind of thought through that for the next couple of years. And then I thought, this really needs to be online. And at that point, Etsy was starting to really charge a lot more fees, and becoming a place that people didn't want to be necessarily. So a lot of makers who I really respected, I saw them leaving their Etsy shops, and I thought there has to be something better out there. And if not, maybe I can create it. And so that's what I did. March of 2020, we were all sent home for the pandemic, and I launched Happening Hands. It was a marketplace, and the tagline was the marketplace that does the marketing for you. That was it. That quickly became unsustainable because it was just one person. But I did grow the marketplace to about 15 makers. And that fall, I was approached by a nonprofit local to me. They have a creative business accelerator where they connect makers to markets, and they give them a lot of free business resources. So they connected with me and said, hey, we want to partner with you. And they helped me over the next year get my business plan together, my financial projections, all of that stuff. And I applied for funding through them for $50,000 to build a new marketplace, because the one that I had created myself was very clunky. It was hard to use. It was definitely not the solution that I wanted. If I had been a maker and seen it, I would have said, no way would I list on this clunky marketplace. But I was so excited to receive the funding, and I invested in developers to build this new site from scratch pretty much. And it launched in November of last year. And it launched kind of at a bad time. So it was at the end of November, when a lot of makers are gearing up for their last shows, and then January comes and they don't want to talk to anybody. Like they're done for the season and they just need to like take inventory and get ready for the next year. So not a lot of people were interested in joining at first, but over the next 4 or 5 months, I built the marketplace up to about 40 makers. And it quickly became clear that what had been built was really hard to use. So even though I was creating all these tutorials and everything, it was really a difficult platform to use. And a lot of makers found the community portion of Happening Hands so much more helpful. So in that community portion, we have resources for makers. We have a resource library, we have courses, workshops, monthly coaching, all sorts of things in there, which are just amazing and really helpful. And the makers were gravitating towards that and to the one-on-one connection and feedback and all of that stuff. And so what I did was, after a lot of hard conversations, I decided that this was going to be just a membership. And so I approached the developers and I wanted to ask them just, hey, can we offboard the marketplace in the next 5 to 6 months? And instead of having a conversation with me, like their customer service was terrible. They shut down my marketplace in 24 hours, less than 24 hours. And my marketplace was gone. They wouldn't respond to any of my emails. And I felt like such a failure in that moment. And even though that was kind of the plan to offboard, but it was not the plan for it to happen that fast. And so I really had to pivot my business quickly, despite being in total shock. But it's been a really good thing. So that happened back in March. And now we are a fully fledged just membership program for makers. And we have over 100 members. And to see its growth has been amazing, and the connections that are happening in there. And so I guess I just like looking over my time with Happening Hands, I always think at different moments or I have thought at different moments that I was failing at what I was doing. However, I wasn't failing. I was just learning a lot. One of the things that I learned a lot during my time with the marketplace, we had this application process and makers would apply. And one of my questions was, what do you struggle with the most in your business? And it was always the same exact answer. And it was marketing. They don't understand how to market their work, or they don't have time for it. And so that's the biggest struggle. And so how can I meet them where they're at and really help them kind of get through that struggle and provide them with the resources they need in order to feel like they can move forward with support. And so that's what Happening Hands is all about now. And I'm just so excited to see where it goes. I actually haven't told anyone this yet, except for you. So I can't wait for this to go live because it's a huge announcement. But Maria Lauren, who's been running the Handmade CEO podcast now for the past couple of years, she contacted me and said, hey, do you want my podcast? Because it really aligns with what Happening Hands' mission is, which is to help makers build profitable handmade businesses. And what she does is she brings on all these experts onto the show to talk about tips that you can implement in your own business to grow your business. And she also brings on makers to talk about their stories and their struggles and everything that kind of got them to where they are today. And so I'm so excited to incorporate that into the Happening Hands world, and be able to provide makers who, even if they're not a member, they can go on there for free and just listen to this podcast and get all of these tips for free and implement those into their own businesses. So that's all super exciting. And I'm not saying that the marketplace won't ever return again. However, being able to see just the look on a maker's face when they have figured something out or they learned something new that they didn't ever know about marketing that was possible. I love to be able to see that. So that is my story. And I hope that it's helpful for someone, especially those who might feel like they're failing along their journey. You're not, it's just part of the journey. And even if, even if it doesn't look exactly like you thought it was going to be, it's going to be okay.
That is just absolutely amazing. You know, we were talking a little bit earlier before we started the interview how you and I share a passion with the arts.
Mhm.
I'm a textile artist, and it always breaks my heart in that a lot of artists are creative. They
Yeah.
don't even realize the capacity they have.
Mhm.
And a lot of them end up not being able to make money from their art because they don't have that business savvy.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
if there is an artist who's listening to this interview right now and is in
Mhm.
that space where they know they've got something good, they don't know where to get started,
Mhm.
what three nuggets of wisdom could you share? What are the three steps they have to take to get to a point where they can become profitable?
Sure. So I do think that the first step is thinking about your goals and your dreams and what you want to achieve and the message you're trying to put out there. Because if you can hone in on that, then you are going to be able to connect with so many people who care about you as an artist, or an artisan, and who can then invest in your story. I think a lot of marketing has to do with story. I remember the day the marketplace went down. um, there was a story that came out in a local magazine here in Pittsburgh, and it was just my story. It was just my story about how I got started as an entrepreneur. And this was like 2 hours before the marketplace went down. I was getting like 80 subscribers an hour from this one story. Just people who wanted to invest in the makers and the mission and the story behind Happening Hands. And so, if you can hone in on what that story is, that's going to do you a world of good, and it's going to help you get very far, because then you can use that story to connect with, individual customers, but also with the press and with others who, you might not even realize what the opportunities are. Kind of like I was talking about with Maria, I interviewed on her podcast. She heard my story, and now we're collaborating in this way, and I'm able to continue her podcast. And so, also realizing that there are so many different ways to market your work, not just one. And, you know, being able to do as much research as possible is really helpful, because one method might not be the best for you, another might be perfect, and you just need to try. You just need to try, and you can. The third thing is, find a mentor or a support community, because if you can have people in your life who are cheering you on and who are meeting you in a space of positivity around your business, that's going to help you so much. Honestly, like, being an entrepreneur can be very lonely unless you are surrounded with these people who can support and encourage you. I remember, when I first started, I really didn't know anyone in business at all. That was not my background necessarily. I knew makers, but I didn't really know like these nonprofits or podcast hosts or whatever. I just didn't have that background. Once I started networking, and found some mentors in that space, things just went so much better for me, because I felt like, people believed in me. It wasn't just me alone.
Wonderful. Yeah, marketing is storytelling these days. They say
Mhm.
that people buy from people they like.
Yeah.
So the more personal the story, the more they can relate to you as a person. You can
Mhm.
sell anything if you are down to earth and authentic. So that's some
Absolutely.
really good advice. Now, in terms of membership and keeping a community connected,
Mhm.
a lot of people have got databases with a bunch of emails that
Mm.
don't convert, that don't generate money. Give us some community building tips. How do
Mhm.
you keep your community engaged and motivated to support your efforts?
Absolutely. So, when starting small, it's really important to provide a lot of value to your community members. So, one thing I've done is I've connected with each one and said, hey, let's connect for a free business consultation. And so we can just have a conversation. I'd love to hear about your business and what you're struggling with. And you can use those conversations to build engagement in your community and give even more value. So, for example, one of the consultations I had with one of my makers, she was really struggling with wholesale. And I didn't know a ton about wholesale, but I immediately did a ton of research. And then I connected with someone who was able to help me put a guide together for our makers that was all about how to get started in wholesaling for your handmade business. And this wasn't just going to help her, it's going to help a lot of other members who haven't gotten started in wholesale yet or are looking for other options when it comes to continuing in their wholesale journey. And so that connection, it feels really personal for people. And it doesn't make you like, it turns you into a person, not just this faceless community that just has this theme or whatever. It's like they have that connection with you now.
Yeah, I always say that when you have people in your pool,
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like you have some fish and you need to keep feeding them with information and
Yeah,
staying engaged with them to keep the community spirit going as well.
absolutely. Yeah. So I do a
So,
lot of lives and that sort of thing too. It's
oh,
helpful.
fantastic. So now let me teleport you into the future. We're going to have a little
Okay.
thought experiment. You're now 100 years old and you're
Oh my
sitting in your
gosh.
rocking chair, surrounded by your dogs, your cats, your children, your great grandchildren. If I could teleport you there now from where you are to have a conversation with a 100-year-old you,
Yeah.
based on how you are living your life and
Mm,
how she has led you to that point,
mm.
what would you say to her?
Oh my gosh. I can't even imagine being that old, but it's also kind of exciting in a way. I would say to her that she has arrived finally. And, after that many years of life, she has helped so many people. And that really was the goal all along, no matter what she was doing, whether it was a membership community, working in a library, helping her toddler with whatever, or, her daughter as she grows over the years, assisting her husband with whatever he needs in his, he has a job as a youth minister. So we're always having families over here and doing all kinds of activities. And I love helping with that. And, I would just say, like, thank you for being a helper.
The reason why I asked that question is a lot of women don't realize that they already have the wisdom within them.
Mm,
You already know exactly where you're going in your life.
yeah.
You wouldn't have this seed inside you that says, be a helper. Not
Yeah.
everybody is called to do this work.
Mm,
And when you recognize that in yourself, what I do personally is when I get really stuck,
yeah.
I go into meditation and prayer and
Hmm.
I ask my future self, what is the next step?
Mm,
Because she knows and she's guiding me there.
yeah.
And sometimes I will come up with clear words in my head, the next move I need to make, or I will be in conversation with someone the next day and I mention what I'm working on and they give
Mhm.
me a tip or an idea.
Yeah.
But we do have the solutions, we do have the answers within us, and we have to believe that.
Yeah.
So, is there anything I should have asked you in this interview and I didn't? What are your parting thoughts for us today?
My parting thoughts for the day. um, I guess my parting thoughts for the day are that as an entrepreneur, you are going to struggle sometimes. It's not always going to be a perfect journey. It's going to be messy sometimes, no matter how many moments you have that you're like, I want this to be perfect and go perfectly. It's not always going to be that way, but that's not a bad thing. Using those struggles as a way to move forward and to set new goals. That's something that I often do with some of my clients. We do have the membership, but I also do business strategy coaching with some of our makers. And what I do with them is I say, hey, what have you struggled with? And we lay out all of their struggles in their business. And sometimes it gets personal, because business can be personal for a lot of people, especially for makers who are making things with their own hands. This is, their life work. It's what they love to do. It's part of them. And what we then do is we turn those struggles into goals that they can achieve and move forward in a way that is super positive and, helps them get to the next level. And so I would just say that, for anyone listening, if you feel like you're struggling, how can you turn those struggles into something positive and something that you can grow into something beautiful from?
Thank you so much for coming online and sharing your wisdom with us today. I've been looking for more creative women to come onto our platform, to share ideas, to share their stories, to inspire and uplift those in the creative world. So this has been a fantastic interview for me. And thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. The Her Story movement is attracting some amazing women who are willing to share their stories, their ideas, their path to get to where they are. So tune in again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing woman. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And Kiana, thank you again for the interview.
Thank you, Gertrude.
Bye for now, everybody. Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making her story.